What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and this is my pitch for Wolverine in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So first things first, the basis behind all of this is Hydra. And I know people are gonna say, oh my God, Hydra's been done to death. Has it though? Because by the end of this, I think you're gonna be like, yeah, man, that should be how it's done in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Just hear me out. This has 3 plot threads. Each one's very, very easy to follow. I'll explain to you what the plot thread is, and then I'll tell you why it works. Plot thread number 1, Hydra creates Weapons Plus. What's Weapons Plus? In Marvel Comics, Weapons Plus was introduced to us in New X-Men issue number 128. And the idea behind it is that it was initially a United States government program and then eventually a joint venture between the United States CIA and Canada's Department H. But the overall goal here was to basically contain and control the mutant threat. And in fact, in Marvel Comics, Captain America was Weapon 1, Project Rebirth. He was supposed to be the first in a new line of super soldiers that were tasked for the purpose of containing and controlling mutants. World War II was a field test. If Captain America proved to be successful, which he was, and if he had returned to the United States at the end of the war, which he didn't, his mind would have been wiped and he would have gone forward as the first in a new line of super soldiers to stand against the rising mutant population in the United States. We would take that concept and we would modify it. What we would say here is that, as we know in Captain America the Winter Soldier, Hydra was secretly taking control of S.H.I.E.L.D. The problem is that while they did want their own line of Captain Americas that could basically do Hydra's bidding, Steve Rogers was believed to be dead. We know he was alive and frozen in a block of ice, but Hydra didn't know that, and so there was no way to extract the super soldier serum from his blood. At the same time, Abraham Erskine was the only person to have the formula for the super soldier serum, but he died in Captain America 1, so there was no way to create new super soldiers that would be identical to Captain America. And so as part of a series of just extremely covert projects that were maintained at black sites, Weapons Plus was introduced as a series of programs to create various versions of super soldiers. The great thing about this is you can take a lot of what's already in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and just roll it into Weapons Plus. The most obvious example here would be Bucky Barnes, right? But what you could also do is you could say, like, the entirety of the Red Room, the Black Widow program, that's all Weapons Plus. You could say even that, like, the Purple Man, Zebediah Killgrave, given his age and the time at which Hydra was defeated, he basically gained his powers through the experiments of his parents long before Hydra was defeated in Captain America the Winter Soldier. So you could say that, like, the Purple Man from Jessica Jones was a Weapons Plus product. But that's the first plot thread. Hydra creates Weapons Plus. Plot thread number 2, Hydra creates adamantium accidentally. So here's how this would work. In Black Panther 1, one of the things that we learned is that the only way to attain vibranium was within Wakanda itself. Unless you were someone like Ulysses Claw, who managed to somehow sneak in and then escape with your life, albeit with a little bit of vibranium, there was no conceivable way to get your hands on it. But we learned in Black Panther 2 that a vibranium deposit exists in the Atlantic Ocean. So what we say here is that at some point along the line, either as part of Weapons Plus or some other project that Hydra was working on, they were trying to find vibranium. They learned that it existed in Wakanda, but they knew there was no way to get in there. But they discovered vibranium in the Atlantic. But much like the opening scene from Black Panther 2, when you had that group trying to get vibranium, that Hydra was attacked. The difference is that Hydra managed to escape with a tiny little piece of vibranium. And so what they did is they took that shard of vibranium and they handed it over to a guy named Myron McClane. Now, why am I using that name? Because in Marvel Comics, Myron McClane is the guy who created adamantium. So a little bit of history here, right? Kind of back away from this theory for a second in this Wolverine video. Let's talk about comic book history. So when Captain America was first introduced, he had literally a shield in the shape of an iron. But during World War II, he went to Wakanda and fought alongside the Wakandans against the forces of Rommel and the Germans. During this time, he realized that Wakandans were using circular shields, which could be used offensively in the sense that you could throw it, or it could be used defensively in that it could block things. Not only that, at the end of the campaign, as thanks for helping the Wakandans, he was given a tiny piece of vibranium. And so he goes back to the United States and he orders the federal government to create a new shield that's round and to make it out of vibranium. This entire project was handed over to Myron McClane. Again, we're still talking about the comic books here. Myron McClane actually fell asleep during the process. And when he woke up, he basically discovered a kind of vibranium iron hybrid, right, called proto-adamantium. But in an attempt to recreate this proto-adamantium, he created true adamantium. Now, proto-adamantium is stronger, right? I mean, that's why Wolverine's claws cannot cut through Captain America's shield. But what we would do here is we would more or less copy this process absent the whole thing with Captain America, that Hydra was able to escape with a tiny piece of vibranium, and they ended up handing it over to Myron McClane, the best metallurgist that Hydra had working for them, and their task was find a way to duplicate this. The problem was he couldn't duplicate it, but during the process, he ended up creating a new metal that was more durable than vibranium, but did not have any of the sound absorbing properties of vibranium. And he ended up calling it adamantium. Now, the most logical question to ask here is that if adamantium has been made here, then why haven't we seen it at any point in the history of the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Well, the first answer to that question is that Myron McClane was only able to make so much adamantium, right? Just a relatively limited amount of it given the shard of vibranium that was available to him. The second reason is because adamantium has to stay in a liquid state. The instant it hardens, you can never get it back to a liquid state again, right? So if Hydra was going to use it, they better make it good, right? This is like a single use case material. So that's plot thread number 2. Hydra creates adamantium by accident. Plot thread number 3. James Howlett. And this is probably going to be the most divisive part of this pitch. The healing factor of James Howlett did not activate when he was a little kid. His origin, as you traditionally know it in Marvel Comics and even in the Wolverine Origins film, is not the origin that we're going with. We're going with the origin from the Ultimate Universe. So here's the way this would work in the MCU, right? This is my pitch for James Howlett. This I think is probably one of the coolest parts, right? Here's what we would do. James Howlett is a guy who's part of like a Black Ops wet work team that operates through the CIA, right? They're called Team X, right? Similar to what you saw in Wolverine Origins, but not crappy. But this team is solid. They're the best there is at what they do. These guys will take out any target. It doesn't matter what it is. If a face comes across their desk, that guy gets killed. Here's a kicker to all of this. They were operating as agents of Hydra. They simply didn't know it because Hydra was secretly controlling S.H.I.E.L.D. And while they were not getting their orders from S.H.I.E.L.D. per se, they were getting their orders from the CIA. And as we know, Hydra didn't simply just have agents in S.H.I.E.L.D. They had agents in the upper echelon of the federal government and throughout every single intelligence organization, which meant that the various targets that Team X was taking out, we could say this takes place during like the 60s and 70s, right? During the Cold War, basically, that the various targets that Team X was taking out, they were Hydra targets. There were people that were a threat to Hydra. Now, because Team X was so good at what they did, Hydra decided to bring them in as their newest test subjects for Weapons Plus, which is the Weapon X program. Weapon 10, whatever you want to call it. And as you would expect with a program like this, they were drawing blood and they were scanning their bodies and so on and so forth. But Hydra comes to the realization that James Howlett, codenamed Wolverine when he was on the team, that he has a gene in his body that does not match anything in the human genome. They don't know what it is. And so they activate it. Boom, he has a healing factor. And that's when they realize, this is our assassin. This is the guy that we use our adamantium on. If this guy can heal from anything, take this indestructible metal, bond it to his skeleton, brainwash him, and send him out as an assassin. Such as it is, he ended up escaping the brainwashing process even after the adamantium was bonded to his body and effectively took off. And Hydra just wasn't able to find him again for any number of reasons, right? You could just chalk it up to like his Black Ops training, that he's very good at staying hidden. But again, this is all just kind of an idea that I have. Let me know what you guys think about this down in the comments section. I'm really kind of curious. I think it's cool. It's obviously got holes and it would have to be tightened up a little bit, but let me know what you guys think. But with that being said, we're going to bring this to an end and I will catch you all later. Peace.